All I can say about what happened last night is, wow. First of all, Oklahoma City, huge win last night. Y'all got beat in your own house in game 1, and you responded with fucking authority. Goddamn, 150 points? That's like something you would see in 2K. They were up by as much as like 49 or something like that. They beat the Nuggets by like almost 50. And Boston. This is now the second time you have blown a 20-point lead in your own house, by the way, to New York, and you lost game 2. So, the top 2 seeds of the Eastern Conference are now down 2-0. All I gotta say is, Jason Tatum, you overrated bitch. This is exactly why, when you got players like Jokic, Shea, and Giannis, this is why you'll never win an MVP in your career. The only MVP you're getting is Finals MVP, and I honestly gotta put an asterisk on that one you won the past season. I think I saw his field goal percentage was like 4 of 19? That's unacceptable. How is it possible for an NBA team coming off of a championship win to blow not one, but 2 20-plus point leads in their own house 2 games in a row to a team they should be beaten by 30? Welcome to the NBA, where literally anything can happen. That's all I have for basketball. It's time for football now. Welcome back to Grizzly Talks Football. I'm the Grizz, and this episode we have ACC version, 2024 season reviews and 2025 predictions. It's the moment you've been waiting for, the final Power 4 conference before we head to the group of 5, which will start next week. If you haven't already, make sure you check the link in the description for the entire playlist so that you can see every single episode that I've already posted, but you'll also have it for future episodes when I post them. Also, make sure you hit the red subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single any one of my videos. Without further delay, let's get to the ACC tier list. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know the drill, but if you don't, here's how it works. You see all 5 categories, all the teams that are elite, teams that are above average, teams that are decent, teams that are disappointing, and teams that were ass. Sound good? Great, let's get started. Kicking things off, we got the Boston College Eagles. It's the first team of the vid, and I'm already starting off handing out a decent. 7-6 season, got a top 10 win in their first game against Florida State. Come on, that franchise was dysfunctional, but I'm still counting it as a top 10 win. I think a better term to describe this team is inconsistent, because against ranked teams, the highest they lost by was 10. And then they only went by 1 point against Western Kentucky and get dominated by Virginia Tech, and even lose to a non-bowl eligible Virginia. Started off their first 5 games winning 4, and ended their final 4 games of the regular season winning 3 of them. They made the Pinstripe Bowl, where they lost by 5 to the Cornhuskers of Nebraska. I mean, the quarterbacks didn't too bad. Tommy Castellanos had like 18 touchdowns, 1,400 yards, 5 picks. He was the starter, but then Grayson James had 6 touchdowns, 1,200 yards, and 2 picks. So quarterbacks weren't terrible. Then you had Kai Robichaux with 750 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. And on the receiving end, you had Lewis Bond with just under 700 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. 3 players were drafted from this team. Donovan Ezeraku, edge defender, went to the Cowboys in the 2nd round. And also in the 2nd round, Ossie Trapilo, offensive tackle, went to the Bears. And there was also interior O-lineman Drew Kendall going to the Eagles, and I believe this 5th round. Undrafted players include Cam Horsley and Jack Conley on the trenches. Decent season, but let me tell you, Boston College knows how to produce NFL draft players. Just ask Matthias Kiwanaku, that boy is a beast. And also a quarterback that won an MVP. He goes by the name of Matty fucking Ice. Also, Falcons, please retire his number. Just please do it. Guy's a legend, won an MVP, it needs to happen. Up next, we got the Cal Golden Bears. Oof, yikes. I just put him at decent, even though I don't feel like doing that. They're more disappointing than decent, but it's only fair. 67th season, lost in the LA Bowl to UNLV. Including the bowl game, they played against 4 ranked opponents. Could it be 2 of them if they didn't blow that lead to Miami in Berkeley? But after starting 3-0 and then lose it to Florida State, it just went downhill. Could have won at Pittsburgh, could have won against Miami, got dominated by SMU and lost badly to UNLV. Not much really else to say except you did beat Auburn. Fernando Mendoza had an okay season, 16 touchdowns, 3,000 yards, 6 interceptions. You also had Javian Thomas, 600 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground. And on the receiving core, Jack Andrews with 600 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nazia Hunter, 578 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. 4 players were drafted from this team. Corner Noah Williams went to the Chiefs in the 3rd round. Also in the 3rd round, safety Craig Woodson went to the Patriots. Then there was also Teddy Buchanan, linebacker, going to the Ravens. And Marcus Harris, another safety, went to the Titans. The draft talent definitely saved this team from mediocrity, that's for sure. Coming up next, we get the Clemson Tigers. Now look, I put all the playoff teams in the elite tier, but this is the one exception I am making. I'm going to put Clemson in above average, but here's why. They were the only team in the playoffs that had 3 losses, and they were ACC champs because they defeated a top 10 SMU team that also made the playoff. Losses were to a playoff-bound Georgia, a Louisville team that was pretty mid, and then also South Carolina. Yeah, a playoff team losing 3 games is not ideal, but Clemson somehow pulled that off. Unfortunately, in their first playoff game of that one against Texas, they lost by 14. Still a pretty solid season for Clemson standards. Dabo, you did it again. Kate Clarkman actually had a very impressive season. 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Damn. Phil Maffa had 1,100 rushing yards with 8 touchdowns, and on the receiving core, Antonio Williams led the core with 900 yards and 11 touchdowns on the receiving end. Only 3 players were drafted from Clemson's team. Linebacker Barrett Carter went to the Bengals, safety RJ Miggins went to the Chargers, and Phil Maffa went to the Cowboys. Undrafted free agents include Jay Bridenstone, Penn Page, and Marcus Tate. Clemson has been a very good football program for like the past decade. Let's just hope they can keep this success going because I'm really expecting them to win the ACC this upcoming season again. Coming up next, we got the Duke Blue Devils. Shockingly good. Who expected Duke to win 9 games this year? Definitely not me. After Riley Leonard transferred out to Notre Dame, I was not expecting Duke to do shit, but again, I was wrong. They went 9-4 with losses to SMU by 1 point, lost to Miami, and lost to Georgia Tech. Oh yeah, did you know Duke started 5-0 this season? That is unbelievable. Won their first 5, won their last 3, but got dominated by Ole Miss in the Gator Bowl, but I think we all expected that. This was a really successful season for Duke. I'm very surprised that they were actually this great. Lee Murphy had a pretty solid season, just under 3,000 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 picks. You also had Star Thomas, what a name, 871 rushing yards with 7 touchdowns. And on the receiving core, 2 players with around 800 yards. Jordan Moore with 861 yards and 8 touchdowns, and Eli Panko with 798 yards and 9 touchdowns. No players drafted because who in the world is outstanding at Duke besides Daniel Jones? This was pretty much a team effort to get 9 wins. I'm really shocked by how this season went, but I'm not expecting them to do much else in the upcoming season. Next up, we got the Florida State Seminoles. Ass. This program should honestly just go to hell. You went from a top 10 preseason rank to 10 losses. What the hell? Dead last in conference standings, and you went 2-10. What the hell, man? The only games you won was against the Cal team that was decent at best and an FCS school. Pathetic. This was absolutely, positively guaranteed the worst Florida State season ever. DJU run that program to the ground, they said. They had to start 3 different quarterbacks, and they all sucked. Rushing game was abysmal. Only guy really worth mentioning was Lawrence Toafili with just under 500 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. And the receiving core, the only guy worth mentioning is Jackie Douglas. Just over 500 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. You're lucky that 2 prospects went into the draft. Cornerback Azarie Thomas went to the Jets in the 3rd round, and soon after, defensive lineman Josh Farmer followed to the Patriots. I'm not going to mention every other undrafted free agent. Most notable ones were Ryan Fitzgerald and DJU going to the Chargers. Fitzgerald didn't go to the Chargers, but DJU did. I'm just going to go ahead and just move on. get this monstrosity out of here. Coming up next, we got Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They were actually decent. 76 season, they did lose to Vanderbilt in the Birmingham Bowl somehow. 2 top 10 wins out of 4 ranked opponents they played this season. Beat a top 10 Florida State team in Dublin, and then brought the number 4 Miami Hurricanes to town and beat them there. They won 5 of their first 7. Unfortunately, could not beat a 3rd ranked team in the top 10 against Georgia. Controversially, and quite literally. Haynes King was a menace on the ground and the pass. 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 picks, and on the ground, 11 touchdowns. He had a total of like 2,700 yards. There was also Jabal Haynes with just under 1,000 rushing yards with 9 touchdowns. And on the receiving corps, Eric Singleton and Malik Rutherford had over 700 yards, each with 3 touchdowns. There were 2 drafted players. Jackson Hawes, tight end, went to the Bills, and defensive lineman Zeke Biggers went to the Dolphins. This was a pretty okay season, and with Haynes King coming back, I'm really excited to see how Georgia Tech goes from here. And next we got the Louisville Cardinals. I'll definitely say above average. 9-4, won a bowl game against Washington, beat Clemson at Death Valley, which is quite impressive. Almost beat Stanford, almost beat Notre Dame, but then they lost to Stanford. Luckily for Louisville, they won 4 of their last 5. They actually won their first 3 games, including one against Georgia Tech. But man, they could have easily been a contender in the ACC if they just didn't let things slip away in the games they lost closely. Super senior Tyler Shuck had 3,200 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 6 picks. Not too shabby. Isaac Brown had just under 1,200 rushing yards with 11 touchdowns. And then Shakori Brooks, transfer from Alabama, had just over 1,000 receiving yards with 9 touchdowns. In the draft, 3 players were selected. Tyler Shuck went to the New Orleans Saints in the 2nd round. Then, soon after in the 3rd round, edge defender Ashton Gillott went to the Chiefs. And then Quincy Riley at corner went to the Saints. Shakori Brooks and Corey Thornton were undrafted free agents. This was definitely a very interesting season, but hey, Louisville's doing pretty nicely in the ACC there. Up next, we got the Miami Hurricanes. Above average. 10-3 season. They could have made the playoffs if they would have just beaten Georgia Tech and or Syracuse and made the ACC championship, but they blew it. Started 9-0, nearly lost the Cal in Berkeley. Had to come out from a 25-point lead, and you choked the lead against Syracuse. To make matters worse, you lost to Iowa State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. You started 9-0, then you lose your 3 of the last 4 games, including the bowl game. This is why you need a defense that is as competent as an offense. Just ask the Cincinnati Bengals. At least Cam Ward was very impressive. 4,300 yards through the air, 39 touchdowns, 7 picks. Damian Martinez led Russia with just over 1,000 yards with 10 touchdowns. Don't forget Fletcher's 9 touchdowns on the ground as well. And on the receiving end, Xavier Restrepo, 1,100 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. 7 players were drafted in this class, including the number 1 overall pick, which was Cam Ward to the Tennessee Titans. And of course, his wide receiver Xavier Restrepo is joining him at Tennessee among the undrafted free agents. Not going to go too deep. Miami's season was great, but definitely could have been better. Up next, we got the NC State Wolfpack. Decent. 6-7, very disappointing. Lost to East Carolina in the Military Bowl. They were dominated by the ranked teams that they played. Definitely, if they had a more easier schedule, they would have probably had like 8 or 9 wins. They had some close calls against teams that they probably should have beaten, but all in all, it was pretty bad. Grayson McCall, of course, I think retired, and then CJ Bailey had 17 touchdowns, 10 picks, 2,400 yards. It was okay. Rushing game wasn't too great. Hollywood Smothers, 571 yards, 6 touchdowns. On the receiving end, Justin Jolly, 660 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. And only 1 player was drafted. It was Anthony Belton, interior offensive lineman, going to the Packers in the 2nd round. And in the trenches, Devin Van and Timothy McKay were undrafted free agents. An okay class for NC State, an okay season. It was just all mid. And you know they don't want mid, they want good at least. Up next, we got the North Carolina Tar Heels. I know they're rivals, but UNC, you are still very disappointing. North Carolina has had some good seasons where they were ranked at one point of the season. This, I believe, was no different, and then they lost to Virginia that past season, this was definitely a very disappointing season for UNC fans. Then you lost to UConn in the Fenway Bowl, and you lost to your rivals and threw a fit about it. Trust me, rivalry week this past season was nuts. And then you allowed 70 points to James Madison in the Sun Belt. This season was just very disappointing. Jacoby Criswell was okay, 2,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks. On the ground, Amari Hampton was a beast, 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns. And on the receiving core, J.J. Jones was the most notable with just under 600 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Of course, the only player drafted out of UNC in the first round was running back Amari Hampton going to the Chargers. He and Najee Harris are going to tear up the league. Yeah, maybe. It really depends on the whole J.K. Dobbins situation because he's injury prone. And a whole load of undrafted free agents I will not exactly go over one by one. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't great. I mean, also needed to put a team in the disappointing tier, so there you go. Up next, we got the Pittsburgh Panthers. Ugh. Up a hill and back down. No, seriously, this Pittsburgh season was exactly that. Started the season 7-0. Let me tell you, 7-0, and then they lose their last 6. Including the Game Above Sports Bowl to Toledo in 6 overtimes. Could have beaten Virginia, could have beaten Clemson, could have even beaten Boston College as well. Could have finished the season with 10 wins, but nope. The collapse had to happen sooner rather than later. Reminds me of every time I sim against the UCF Knights in NCAA 06. Start off hot and then go to shit. Eli Holstein, he was okay, 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. Desmond Reed was pretty nice in the run game, just under 1,000 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, and Kanata Muntfield with 800 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. Only 3 players were drafted out of Pittsburgh. Offensive tackle Brenton Taylor went to the Chargers, tight end Gavin Bartholomew went to the Vikings, and wide receiver Kanata Muntfield went to the Rams. If only Pittsburgh wasn't so shit in the second half of the season, they could have salvaged it and maybe made a big bowl game. But you can't always have nice things, can you? Up next, we got the SMU Mustangs. Cue it.
Elite!
11-3 season, runner-ups in the ACC. This was a very successful season for SMU's first year in a back in a power conference, should I say. Only loss other than the conference championship and the playoff was against my BYU Cougars. But let me ask, a BYU fan, did y'all think that game was ugly as hell? Because other than that, they beat a ranked Louisville, beat a ranked Pittsburgh, almost beat a Clemson team, but the fact that Clemson won that close, SMU got in the playoff, Bama did not, so that really made me smile. Of course, they then got blown out by Penn State in the playoff in the first round, but still a good season for SMU. After Princeton, who is now on the Northwestern Wildcats now, we had Kelly Jennings, had 3,200 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 11 picks. Not terrible at all. But the real man of the show was Brashard Smith, 1,300 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns. On the receiving core, Roderick Daniels had 663 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. And in the draft, only 2 players were selected. Edge defender Elijah Roberts and Brashard Smith went to the Chiefs. Roberts went to the Bucks. If it wasn't for the death penalty, SMU would have probably been a big force in the power conferences, but of course they had to do the no-nos. But at least they got back and really showed them they could be a really reliable program. Up next, we got the Stanford Cardinal. Disappointing. 3-9 season. Only wins were against the ranked Louisville team at home. They won against Syracuse and against Cal Poly, an FCS school. It's been rough for Stanford, and now Andrew Luck is taking over the program, so I'm excited to see what he does. Got Trent Taylor fired, and a couple of players followed him in the transfer portal. It was just a rough year for Stanford, you know. Ashton Daniels, more touchdowns than picks. Very bad. Ashton Daniels also had 669 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. What? And Elick Ayomanor had 831 receiving yards along with 6 touchdowns. Speaking of Ayomanor, he was selected by the Titans in the draft. He was the only one selected. He was basically the only thing good to happen to Stanford. Other than that, it was just, down the sewage. Up next, we get the Syracuse Orange. Above average. If you don't see they're above average, you just literally don't know ball. 10-3 season, won their Holiday Bowl, beat a top 10 Miami team denying them a spot in the ACC Championship and a spot in the playoff. Beat a ranked UNLV team, beat a ranked Georgia Tech. Like, this team was good. Of course, Syracuse has some good years there and then, but this one was not too bad. Only losses were to Stanford, Boston College, and a ranked Pittsburgh. Cal McCord was the quarterback, and he actually balled out pretty hard. 4,800 passing yards, 34 touchdowns, 12 picks. Then you got LaQuint Allen, who had just over 1,000 rushing yards with 16 touchdowns. And Jackson Meeks had over 1,000 receiving yards with 7 touchdowns. Don't forget about Trevor Pina with 941 yards and 9 touchdowns. And Rondé Gadsden with 934 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. Whew, that was a good amount of receivers. But 4 players were drafted, and none of them were receivers, actually. Tight end Rondé Gadsden. Oh, he was a tight end, excuse me. He went to the Chargers. Kyle McCord went to the Eagles, and running back Quinn Allen went to the Jaguars, with edge defender Fadil Diggs going to the Saints. Just a very successful season for Syracuse, and even without Kyle McCord, maybe they can make a big impact, maybe make a bowl game or two. Yeah, the possibilities are endless for every team anyways. Up next, we got the Virginia Cavaliers. Ugh, disappointing. 5-7 season, they started 4-1, and then went to shit. I guess at least they beat a ranked Pittsburgh team, but that was pretty much the only highlight. Anthony Colandrea had 13 touchdowns, 2,000 yards, 11 picks. Not too shabby. Rushing game was pretty ass. And the receiving corps was led by Malachi Fields, who had 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. And only one player was drafted from this team. Safety Jonas Sinker went to the Saints in the 3rd round. 4 of the players were among undrafted free agents. I wouldn't exactly call them decent. They just had a very bad ending to their season when losing 6 of their last 7 games. Up next, we got the Virginia Tech Hokies. I know they lost to Vanderbilt in week 1, but they're still decent. 6-7, lost to Minnesota in the Mayo Bowl, but they also salvaged a bowl game, which is nice. Yeah, they could have beaten Miami as well. In fact, they should have beaten Miami if it wasn't for a bad call at the end of the game. And they also let some games get away, including that Vanderbilt game, like the Syracuse game in overtime, the Duke game, the Clemson game, and that Miami team. Dude, this literally could have been a 12-0 team if things went their way. Kyron Drones, what a name, had 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 picks, not too shabby. Then you also got Bashal Tootin with just over 1,100 yards and 15 touchdowns. On the receiving corps, nothing too crazy. 5 players were drafted. Bashal Tootin went to the Jags. Wide receiver Jalen Lane went to the Commanders. Corner Dorian Strong went to the Bills. Edge defender Antoine Powell-Ryland went to the Eagles. And defensive lineman Aeneas Peebles went to the Ravens. A pretty okay season for Virginia Tech, but very disappointing in terms of their standards, because they're usually a time where Virginia Tech is, like at least ranked, maybe even top 10, but they're way past those years now. And the final team on this list is the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Safe to say, this team definitely fell off. They were absolutely disappointing. For this specific conference, I'm going to leave them out of ass tier because Florida State's down in the doldrums of the Power 4. But Wake Forest went 4-8. Yeah, they definitely declined from their past couple seasons where they, at one point, were ranked in the top 10. Every ranked opponent they played against, they got destroyed. They got spat to the mouth. Only wins besides the FCS school were against a UConn team that won 9 games, a Stanford team, and NC State. Wins weren't terrible, but it's just the fact that they got absolutely destroyed against ranked opponents. I still can't believe they made 2 conference championships and won one of them in 06. Hank Bachmeier was okay. He had 16 touchdowns, 10 picks, 2,600 passing yards, just over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground for DeBon Claiborne. And the receiving corps was led by Taylor Morin with 750 receiving yards and only 2 touchdowns. No players were selected, but among undrafted free agents were Taylor Morin and edge defender Jasheen Davis. Wake Forest was on the slow decline. Their head coach has been around for quite a while. Is it time for him to pack up and leave? That's all for the 2024 season reviews. Let's get into the 2025 predictions. Now we got the ACC 2025 season predictions. Let's start with Boston College. Out of conferences against the FCS school, Michigan State, and Notre Dame. Very bad draw, and I'm expecting them to be right around where they were. I'm expecting a 5-7, maybe 6-6 season. Bill O'Brien is the head coach I now just realized, and I don't think they're going to have as magical of a season as they once was. But obviously, it's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Bill, maybe you could prove me wrong, but I'm not expecting you to. Grayson Lambert's returning as the QB, but defense is going to be the major problem. Up next, we got the Cal Golden Bears. They got a much easier schedule this time around. I'm going to say maybe 7-5. Out of conference is Oregon State and FCS school, but then even Texas Southern and Minnesota. That was a pretty good draw. I think Oregon State and Minnesota made a bowl game this past season, so I'm not too mad at it. And he's actually going to go with quarterback Devin Brown, transfer from Ohio State, and then there's also this freshman prospect named Jaron. I'm not even going to say the rest of that. It was a guy that flipped from Oregon to Cal in last second. No Clemson or Miami on the schedule is huge for Cal. I expected to win a bowl game this year. Up next, we got Clemson. Easily contenders. No surprise there. I mean, come on. We are expecting Clemson to be contenders every season. You got LSU, Troy, Furman, and of course the Palmetto rivalry, South Carolina, as their out-of-conference schedule. A ton of key pieces from the ACC Championship and playoff berth are coming back. They're absolutely favorites to win, and I can see why. As far as the season goes, I would say 11-1, maybe 12-0. A loss I would kind of see is South Carolina. That's it. Up next, we got the Duke Blue Devils. Despite their magical season, I'm not expecting too much out of Duke. Maybe like 6-6, 7-5 maybe. Out of conference schedule includes Tulane and Illinois. Tulane is a road game, so that could be a tough one. And Illinois is also pretty much a guaranteed loss at this point. I'm not saying Duke is terrible. I just was not expecting them to win 9 games this past season. But I think they'll go back down there this upcoming season. Up next, we got Florida State Seminoles. Out of conference includes Alabama to start the year. Then there's also East Texas A&M and Kansas State. If they don't recover from this, I expect them to be at least mid-table, but I don't know what I'm going to say. I'll say 7-5, maybe 8-4. They'll get back to the roots with their coach. I can't remember his name. Oh yeah, Mike Norvell. Yeah, he should bring him back. There's no way Florida State can go back-to-back years at the bottom of the ACC, right? Up next, we got Georgia Tech. Yeah, I expected to be mid-table again. It's just they're just not as good as they were in 2014. In like the early 2010s, late 2000s, should I say. But Brent Key is a solid head coach. Maybe he can turn this program around to maybe ACC contenders. I would expect them to be in the top half. I'm going to go 7-5 here, maybe 6-6. Out of conference includes Colorado and Temple. Should be able to beat Temple and also Gardner-Webb, but Colorado, that's going to be a whole new story. The fact they got Georgia and Clemson on their schedule, that's really tough. Yeah, I'm not expecting Georgia Tech to do too much. Next, we got the Louisville Cardinals. Easy non-conference schedule. Got Clemson and Miami, though, but I would say Louisville goes to above average. Maybe 8-4, maybe 9-3. I'm guessing 8-4. Very consistent. I think the ACC was definitely a little inconsistent. Some teams were definitely inconsistent, like Pitt and Boston College. Jeff Brom's trying to turn this team around, but who knows? 5-0 start is expected. As far as how I think the season will go, I mean, Louisville will be in like the top 5 of the conference. I'll say that. Oh yeah, and they also got rival Kentucky as well. They should win that one. Next, we got the Miami Hurricanes. Yeah, I'm expecting like a 9-3 or 10-win season. I'm gonna go 9-3 here, but just more above average. Actually, you know what? Yeah, maybe they could be contenders along with Clemson. Not expecting them to do too much, but not enough where they're terrible. Catholics versus Convicts is back with Notre Dame. You also got South Florida and Bethune-Cookman, and also Florida on your out-of-conference schedule. But then you also got SMU, and then a couple winnable games as well. So, not expecting Miami to really do terribly. I'm more expecting them to really run the table, except for perhaps Notre Dame and Florida. SMU's a very tough draw as well. But you never can go wrong with Mario Cristobal as the head coach. Next, we got NC State. I'm expecting them to go like 7-5, maybe 8-4. Not too crazy. I will say NC State is more of like an above-average team in the ACC, so I'll give them that. ECU and Notre Dame are among the out-of-conference schedule. They should lose to Notre Dame. Florida State, Miami might be L's as well. Yeah, they're just like above average at best. They're not really contenders in the ACC, to be honest. Up next, we got North Carolina. The start of the Belichick era in college football. Interesting. They're still going to be like mid-table at best. Nothing too crazy for the first year. Obviously, Belichick has to get used to the college level because he's been in the NFL for so long. He's been to college for a long time. I feel like if there was like one team that's going to have the most eyes watching them in the ACC, it's definitely going to be UNC. Maybe they'll start off pretty bad, but then once the second half starts, they'll start to pick it up. That's how Belichick always does. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. I'm very interested to see how this goes. Up next, we got the Pitt Panthers. This was a brutal schedule. I'll say like bowl game ceiling, maybe 5-7, 6-6. Backyard brawl, of course. You got Notre Dame, Louisville, Miami, Syracuse. Man, this schedule was bad. I think reaching a bowl game is all Pittsburgh can do with this kind of thing. It all starts with West Virginia, of course. Next, we got the SMU Mustangs. They're most certainly going to be above average. I'm going to say 9-3. They definitely won't have as magical season as they did last year, that's for sure, but hey, maybe Kelly Jennings can surprise me and their head coach. I actually don't even know the name of that guy. Oh, Rhett Lashley. He's 16-0 in conference games in the last 2 seasons? Goddamn! They got Baylor and TCU on their schedule out of conference, and then other than that, it's pretty easy, besides Clemson and Louisville. Obviously, they got a tough one against Baylor. TCU might be, it'll be up and down because it's a rivalry game, but I expect SMU to not exactly get to that level of contenders, but be very close to it. Up next, we got Stanford Cardinal. This schedule was absolutely brutal. I think they're going at best 4-8. It's a long road to get Stanford back into contention, but it's definitely not going to be this year. Tough draw of SMU, Florida State, Miami in conference play, but then you also got Notre Dame and BYU in that schedule. That sucks. Road games at SMU, BYU, and Miami, home games against Notre Dame and Florida State doesn't change a damn thing. This team's going to be pretty much ass again. Next, we got the Syracuse Orange. I'll probably say mid-table, 6-6, maybe 7-5. I'll go 6-6, but like a mid-table kind of 6-6. Fran Brown with a debut. That was crazy with Kyle McCord, but no Kyle McCord. Now he's got to look for a new quarterback. It's a much tougher schedule this time around. They'll definitely fall off, and they also lost some key contributors in the offense. This team is expected to fall a little bit. I'm not expected to fall too much, though. They're still a pretty okay team. Next, we got Virginia. Let's be honest, after the season they had, I feel like it's safe to say that their ceiling is a bowl game. Chandler Morris is actually going to Virginia, which could help the passing attack a little bit, but yeah, it's not likely that Virginia is going to really do much of anything in this upcoming season. I feel like 5-7 is a little more respectable, but yeah, Virginia's just not there yet. Next up, we got Virginia Tech. South Carolina and Vanderbilt on your schedule is nuts. Add Florida State, Miami, that's a whole different ball game. It's just even worse. However, I do expect them to at least be 6-6, maybe 7-5, because of, I'm picking it just because of their brand. After losing to Vanderbilt at the beginning of the season, well, Brent Pry actually led them to a bowl game. I may expect them to do the same thing. It's just, it's going to be pretty bad. It's going to be really tough for Virginia Tech to really get back there because of the insane schedule they got. But maybe they could do it. Who knows? And finally, we got the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Very easy out of conference schedule as far as their other schedule goes. I mean, it's a little good. I would say maybe bowl game ceiling would be best. Oh, his name was Dave Clawson. That was the head coach, and now he retired, so maybe he can lead him back there. Maybe he might suck, who knows? I just don't know anything about Wake Forest right now to make me have a firm prediction right now. But I'm thinking maybe the new head coach steps in and takes it to a bowl game. But I'm more like on the 4-8, 5-7 spectrum. And that is all for the 2025 season predictions. Good luck, ACC. that'll do it for this episode of Grizzly Talks Football. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the red subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Once again, so you don't miss a single one of my videos. This is the Grizz. I'm signing off for now. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.